Woody Allen's Decades in Film.
A podcast about the incredible filmography of one of the most prolific and most controversial filmmakers of our time. From Redneck Cella Studios, A&B in Hong Kong, we are your hosts, William Melvin and Q.
What's up, everyone? We are back this week with a decade recap of 1969 to 1979 of Woody Allen's films. And Q and I have been watching the first 8. We watched the first 8 of Woody Allen's films. And he has a lot of he told me it's a roller coaster ride. Let's start talking about it, because this is gonna be I think a lot of Woody Allen fans are waiting for a Woody virgin to finally give his overall thoughts for the first Woody Allen decade.
How do I start? I don't even know how to start this.
How do you start?
I keep catching myself, but I don't think there's any other way but just to dive in. So the decade of Woody Allen's filmography so far that I have seen, I mean, to talk about it as a decade would assume that there were 10 films, but there were just 8. So take note for everyone who just got into listening to our podcast. Welcome. And this is the recap of all of the movies that I have seen so far in this first decade of Woody Allen's masterpieces of film. So to start it off, there's Take the Money and Run in 1969, Bananas in 1971, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask in 1972. 1973 has Sleeper, and then followed by Love and Death, 1975. And then the big 3, the last 3 that we've seen, Annie Hall, 1977, Interiors, 1978, and Manhattan, 1979.
Wow,
And
what a ride of films.
And I think the only thing that he didn't cover, the only genre that he didn't kind of touch in this decade is horror.
Even elements of old school horror are here. You know, the big boob is actually a monster movie.
Actually.
It's the King Kong of tits. So it's like, you know.
Oh yeah, it's the king tits. Few movies actually. The first 3 movies were very, very much comedy oriented.
Yeah.
So just take the money and run. I liked it because it was just, you know, a stand-up comedy routine done in film.
Right. Yeah.
So it was as if you gave a stand-up comic, which he was,
Yeah.
enough budget to make a film, and here is what we're gonna do about it. This is my routine. Let's just demonstrate how that would look like on film, and that's what Taking the Money and Run is. Bananas, he starts kind of like doing more things, but it's still mostly that. It's just your comedy and a lot of like that. And then he culminated those 3 comedies with Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex, because how else can you culminate several years of comedies by just talking about the favorite topic of every the world's favorite topic, which is sex. And he did this with such impact that
that you is scarred for life.
I still get bad dreams. And he did it with such crassness and such visual
crassness and elegance.
Yeah, if you can even marry those 2 terms.
Yeah, because it was brilliantly shot. A lot of those sketches were brilliantly shot.
Exactly. Particularly the one in the game show one.
Yeah. Right. And the sci-fi thing. The
sci-fi thing.
Yeah. The sperm thing. It's brilliant.
Oh, that was brilliant. So that's the first 3 major comedies, and then followed by the very beautifully made sci-fi film Sleeper, which
Sleeper.
stars which had Diane Keaton's first appearance in the Woody Allen 5-year contract,
Yeah,
five
yeah,
movie
yeah,
contract of
yeah, yeah.
films.
As a writer and
Uh,
director. Yeah,
yes,
because we
as a writer
have
and director.
we've had Play It Again, Sam, which we skipped because that's not
Right,
a
right.
Woody Allen directed movie. But in the Woodyverse, this is officially the first Diane Keaton film.
Correct. And so Sleeper, I liked Sleeper because it was such a freshly made film, and it's still a comedy. This introduced me to their chemistry, to the chemistry that would be very, very tangible, very that you could taste all of their banter, all of their conversations. This was the start of it, and that was
Yeah.
such a treat to have in Woody Allen's films. That was followed by Love and Death, still with Woody Allen and Diane Keaton stars, and that kind of like it's still a comedy, but it deals with the topic of death and love and the war
And
and
the existence of God.
and the existence of God.
And suicide.
Yeah,
If there is no God, why don't we just commit suicide? Those are very light-hearted themes.
exactly. And then followed by Annie Hall, which was everyone's supposed proto rom com, which I totally disagree with. Which was very hard for me to digest initially, and then followed by Interiors. Interiors, I think the one that sticks out the most in this roster of films would be Interiors, just
Yeah.
because of how it was shot, how what topics it dealt with, and what it is as a monumental film in this filmography.
It's
And
also
then
the only one in this decade without Woody, right?
without Woody's character.
Yeah. Without the Woody character, yeah.
Yeah. And then to be topped off by Manhattan, which is such a beautiful movie. I still have I still remember those scenes in my head after what I mean Manhattan is just a thing of beauty, to be honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was all 8 films in this 1969 to 1979 run of Woody Allen's films.
This decade ended with Manhattan, and he was among Hollywood's elites at this
At the
point.
time.
1979. Yeah. He was a critical darling. Of course, he had a string of critically loved
Acclaimed,
pieces.
yeah.
Annie Hall, Interiors, and Manhattan. And who could disagree with that? Like,
No.
you just show someone these 3 films and say, they're gonna say this is a very important director. But the thing was, the general public was missing the Woody Allen of old. They were missing the funny Woody Allen, funny without reservations. Because
Yeah.
Annie Hall and Manhattan were both funny, but they were much more complex than
Oh yeah,
your usual
yeah.
funny.
And complex is such a general way to put it, because
Yeah.
these 2 movies are just so layered with how the plot is, how the acting was, and what the intent for these movies were. And if I saw just these 3 movies of Woody Allen,
Yeah.
I think I'm set. I think I'm good.
Yeah, right. And that's what, I go back to the thing Rick Wardley said. Woody Allen's like a Bob Dylan. He's if ever there was another songwriter who just wrote one big hit, like Blowing in the Wind, he'd be set for life. But Bob Dylan
Yeah.
was able to do it again and again and again and again and again. And
Yeah.
that's like what Woody Allen has been doing. He's if he just made Annie Hall and Manhattan, he would still be there. He would just like
Correct.
oh yeah, that guy Woody Allen, he made those 2 influential movies. He's great, But then he was able to do it again and again and again in a span of like 50 years. And
Yeah.
that's not an easy thing to do. And he was able to do it.
Before we continue today's discussion, we'd like to invite everyone to follow us on our channels and social media accounts. What Would You Do podcast is available on Spotify, Anchor.fm, and other major streaming platforms.
Yes, you can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. All you have to do is visit our homepage at www.williamelvin.com/whatwouldydoo for all our links.
Or you can email us, and we'd love to have a quick chat with you at whatwouldydoo@gmail.com.
Annie Hall was a sort of like introduction for Q in the world of art house cinema, and therefore it's like, you know, it was a different experience for him.
It was.
Bombards you with a lot of ideas. You know, it's told in a very
Non-linear
unconventional way.
Yeah.
You know. After seeing Annie Hall, I've made a deeper dive into art house cinema recently, and I've seen a number of Ingmar Bergman's works. Ingmar Bergman being one of Woody's bigger influences. You know, he wanted to punch Diane Keaton for that. For saying bad things about Ingmar Bergman. Yeah. So it's like, and I was watching Wild Strawberries by Ingmar Bergman, and also a film by a French director, Francois Truffaut. I'm sorry if there are French people here and I'm mispronouncing everything. I'm so sorry, but I've seen the 400 Blows, right? So these are the films Woody watched as a budding filmmaker. So these are the films that sparked his interest in filmmaking, and I understand more of a lot of his work now than ever. I've seen 400 Blows and Wild Strawberries, and you know, it's such a it is a play on memory and how it affects people in their present lives, and that's basically what Annie Hall was. And I remember we were talking off air after we recorded the Annie Hall episode, and I just realized that, you know, the Alvy Singer character was actually treating us, the audience, as his psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, right?
It makes sense. It makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense after, you know, viewing it from that perspective. So, as we said, those are the two most influential Woody Allen films of all time, and you were able to spot the influence on sitcoms like Friends. I dropped the reference, you know, how much Seinfeld lifted from Woody Allen. In fact, Seinfeld's one of Seinfeld's creators and the lead writers, Larry David, is gonna be a part of the Woodyverse decades after. So he is he's a large part of American culture. If the controversy did not resurface, we'd be talking about him in a more prominent and open manner now. It's kind of a shame because it's like an unacknowledged influence now in at least in Hollywood. But you just know, right? You just watch movies and you kind of feel like, you know, these guys these guys watched Woody Allen and they were trying to do something like that.
And it's so funny because of the Friends reunion, I started rewatching Friends. and because I saw Manhattan, and because I saw Annie Hall, I could now understand. Oh, that's why. And it's such an enriching kind of like thing to have been able to experience all of these early movies by Woody Allen, because, you know, I mean, every other movie is about New York. I mean, every other Hollywood movie is about New York. And being a witness to how he's made these movies, particularly the last three ones, it's just a great insight to have while watching, you know, the newer new movies that you know.
The newer New York movies.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
newer York movies.
The newer York movies. So yeah, I mean, I have a new appreciation for that, which is
Yeah,
great. Which is great.
yeah.
The first these first few movies that Woody Allen has had, I think the most impactful for me would be the first, the third, and the last.
So that's Take the Money and Run, Everything You
Everything
Always
you
Wanted to
wanted to
Know
know,
About Sex, and Manhattan.
and Manhattan.
Yeah. In
Um,
no
I
particular order, or do you have
no no
like
no no
an
no
order in your head?
the they're not they're not my top three, but
Oh,
I think
really? Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
my top three, but they have the most impact for me.
Okay.
Uh, because Take the Money and Run, because that was my de-virginization of
Yeah,
Woody
right.
Allen. And then Everything You Always Wanted to Know. I was just very tickled by that movie, and this
Tickled.
this kind of introduced me to how random his films would be
Yeah.
down the line, that I really couldn't expect anything, because how irreverent can you be to discuss all of these topics and not, after watching Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex, you have no idea what's going to come. Only to be
So much
greeted.
so that it made you look at Sleeper kind of like a safe film, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh! It felt very safe in comparison. Very, very safe. And then, of course, Manhattan is just it's just beautiful. I mean, no one in his right mind who has seen Manhattan can deny the beauty of this film.
Yeah,
Uh,
even the haters, even the
Even the
ones
haters.
who were
Oh yeah,
uncomfortable with like a 17-year-old and a
yeah,
42-year-old
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I were to rank all of the movies that I've seen, I think my top three. Actually, I'm I like a lot of the movies, but uh, my third slot would be a toss up between Sleeper and Annie Hall.
That's
Annie,
three.
that's
Okay, it's a
my top.
depending on your mood, it's either Annie Hall or Sleeper.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sleeper, because I find I have sci-fi has a I have a soft spot for sci-fi.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And Sleeper is just, it checks that box.
yeah,
Annie Hall, because it's such a complex movie,
yeah.
and it's not that I didn't like it. So it just made me feel things that I
Yeah.
didn't want to
No, I
address.
think I think it's like because you're a visual artist.
Yeah.
You understand how good art is not
Yes.
there to be liked. You know,
Yeah.
good
Exactly.
art is
Exactly.
there to be appreciated in layered manners. It makes you feel things.
Yeah.
It's not kind of like it's a hamburger. You'd like it regardless, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's this is something that is new for Q when he saw it,
Yeah.
Annie Hall, and it kind of kicked the doors to like it warmed
Yeah.
him up for interiors. That's
Kicking the doors actually is a better is a better comparison to my introduction to art house. And then my number two slot would be Take the Money and Run,
Mhm.
because that was such a fun romp. Uh, Combined with the most depressing one, which is Interiors. So I like those two
Again a
polar
toss up.
opposites.
A toss up again on
Yeah, yeah, toss
two.
up.
Also, this is actually the top six in no
Yeah. And
in a
no,
very fluid order. Okay,
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
I understand that. I understand that.
And then my top slot would be Manhattan, because
Unquestionably Manhattan.
yeah, I mean
Unquestionably Manhattan. Okay. So top one is a solid
Manhattan.
Manhattan.
Yeah,
Top
yeah.
two is a toss up between
Wait,
Take the Money and Run
and
and
Interiors,
Interiors. Wow, that's
polar
that's
opposite.
polar opposites, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
number three
polar opposite.
is Sleeper and Annie
Annie
Hall.
Hall.
I understand the thought process of of Q into putting together this list because
Yeah.
it connects to my next question to Q, because a lot of us in the Woody Allen fan community,
Mm-hmm.
we haven't seen these films in order. Like, we weren't able to. I don't know if there are some of them who did experience it that way. For
Yeah.
example, myself, the first Woody Allen movie I saw was The Purple Rose of Cairo, and
Mm-hmm.
then the next one was Annie Hall, and so
Mm-hmm.
on and so forth. I would see the early funny ones years after I've already loved the director, right? So
Okay.
it's like I've seen the early funny comedies just as a footnote to what he really was known for.
Mm.
You already have like this high respect for the guy, and then
Yeah.
you see him doing the silly stuff. It's a
Yeah.
very different experience from what you experienced, and that is why I was able to call him up, like call Q up for this show, because we really wanted to do something like this.
Yeah.
There's a guy who doesn't know anything, and he sits down in front of the screen every week, and basically just cold views a movie and see where that leads. And how is it for you? How was the journey from like early comedies to suddenly you're seeing depth in like Take the Money and or in Love and Death, and then right
Yeah. Yeah.
after that.
You were I remember you mentioning in earlier episodes that uh the first few films are a great introduction and a great kind of like preparation to how what kind of movies this guy
Mm.
Woody Allen would be making down the
Yeah.
line. And had imagine if I had seen Interiors first. I would have hated myself and I would have hated him because
Or see Interiors first and then see Bananas the next
yeah,
time.
right. It's such it's such a tragedy to have to see those in order. But because I saw the earlier movies first, I felt his movie making mature.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me that step forward, those steps forward made me appreciate his films down the line even more. Cuz I mean, I could have just rented all of these movies and just watched them in however order I wanted. And
And that would be so jarring, right? That would be so
yeah,
disorienting.
man.
It's like, what the
So
fuck?
imagine if I saw Annie Hall, Interiors, and everything you wanted to know about sex in that order. It would have it would have been I would have been traumatized.
Or God forbid you saw Interiors right after everything you always wanted to know about sex.
Right? I think that this director is such a such an unstable person.
Yeah, well, he probably is, but
Yeah, he
it's like,
probably is.
he probably is, but it's like, well, that gives his canon of films
Yeah.
that diverse, unique personality in there. You're just like,
Yeah. But I think I because I saw this in the timeline that it's supposed to be seen. I saw how his filmmaking matured and how you were right in mentioning earlier on that a lot of the themes keep coming up, keep
mm,
repeating, and
mhm,
they're tackled in different ways, like how the psychoanalyst
mm,
uh, element keeps popping back
right,
into the current films. And I like seeing that movement. I like seeing that those those elements that he's trying to accomplish.
yeah, right, right,
And those themes within those 8 movies, that it's refreshing. I mean, as an artist myself, to be taken into a journey of seeing an unfolding of how how an artist progresses from being a novice. I mean, he was never a novice to be honest, but
Yeah.
from his first foray into painting until such a point that you see, oh, this is how he is now. Looking at these 8 films and knowing that it's not limited to just these 8, it's something. It's something, and I appreciate it more. I mean, as an artist and as an enthusiast for film and theater, this is
Yeah.
something that I you can't buy this experience.
Right.
You
Uh,
can't compare this experience with anything else, to be honest, because this and I mean, talking about it with someone who knows about the films
Prior
is
to you seeing it. Yeah.
not even prior to me seeing it, but just discussing it, right, to having that conversation with someone right after you've seen it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and share that enthusiasm or that
Yeah.
frustration or that
Yeah, right,
laugh
right,
with
right.
you
Right.
is
And not just me. Even the
Yeah.
listeners are like,
Exactly.
they're constantly feeding us with
Exactly,
feedback.
exactly,
And that's
exactly.
just
And I mean, that's amazing for me as someone who is just embarking on this journey and sharing with everyone how this journey is coming
yeah.
so far. And I'm loving it. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't wait to see the rest of the 42
42.
films, however long that would take me.
40.
If you're enjoying our discussion, another perfect companion for your Woody Allen film marathons is the Woody Allen Pages podcast at www.woodyallenpages.com.
It's a great resource for film by film details that would surely add to your Woody Allen viewing experience. So check them out.
I am grateful for Q agreeing to this one, because you will find it funny. Our audience will find this funny. The original concept for this podcast is for us to talk about wrestling. We were supposed
Yeah,
to
I
talk
remember
about
that, I
the
remember
WWE, and it's
Yeah.
like, my original concept was that, how can someone who doesn't know anything, like, it's gonna be his first wrestling show, how would he react to that one? That was the thesis for the original concept, and it just occurred to me this. Why can't we just like elevate it? If we're gonna be stupid about something stupid, such as pro wrestling, why don't we talk about something that matters instead? Let's talk
Yeah,
about
something
Woody
more
Allen's films.
substantial. Yeah.
We are going to the second decade next week.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I would also want to give my top 3 for this
yeah.
decade. My top 3, and it changes every time I rewatch these. It's like in no particular order.
Okay.
The and it's very predictable for me. It's Annie Hall, Manhattan, and Interiors. Not to say that I don't like the comedies. I could.
Yeah.
It's just that I couldn't put them on the same standard.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
They're in the same conversation, but it's a totally different chapter.
Yeah.
If you ask me for my top 3 early comedies, I would say Love and Death, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex, and Take the Money and Run. That's my easy answer. But
No one likes bananas.
no one likes bananas. I like some of it. I don't like bananas.
yeah.
But it's a thing where you just like, especially with Interiors. Like when
Yeah.
we watched it the other week, it just hit so hard.
Yeah.
It just like, now that I understand the influences, I'm a little bit older, I'm a little bit more mature, and I see that film. That was quite a ride. It was like it was a gut punch. It was a gut punch, and I keep on seeing new things whenever I see Annie Hall in Manhattan. So if you just you know, I know that Annie Hall, like on a in a bigger list, you know, if it's a 50-year list for me, Annie Hall is not on my top 5, and I surprise other Woody Allen fans about that. But you'll see more about what I mean, because I was talking to Q after we watched Manhattan, and I said, you know, this is a perfect way to end this first decade, because this is at the height of his popularity, and the 80s open with a reaction to the public reaction to him transitioning from that comedy director to a more serious one. So that's what we're in for. The next episode would be about Stardust Memories. It's an interesting decade for him. I'm going to just say all the titles for you, not just Q, for all our listeners to be excited about the second decade. The second decade opens with Stardust Memories, 1980. That's gonna be next week. And then we go to A Midsummer Night Sex Comedy. That must raise an eyebrow. 1983 is Zelig. 1984 is Broadway Danny Rose. 1985 is The Purple Rose of Cairo. 1986 is Hannah and Her Sisters. 1987, Radio Days. 1988 is Another Woman. And then the decade ends with Crimes and Misdemeanors. This is a very exciting decade. And this is going to be the decade where we introduce Mia Farrow into the equation. That's a very, very interesting conversation. And we are happy to have you with us listening every week. And we are very excited to do this second decade with all of you.
That was today's episode of Woody Allen's Decades in Film, a podcast about the incredible filmography of one of the most prolific and most controversial filmmakers of our time.
Join us again next week for another deep dive on the art of Woody Allen.